And we're live. It is Friday, May 2nd, the year of our Lord 2025, and it is 8 o'clock a.m., which shouldn't surprise anybody. And I have very rarely used this august platform to flack my own written work. But I'm going to do it today because I sat down on Wednesday, and the situation column normally runs on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, except when it doesn't for any reason that I may choose to put it on a different day. And I thought, it's Wednesday, it's the 100-day mark, and I'm going to write a very simple column that's just a link to something that happened involving executive power in each of the first 100 days. And, you know, I got about 25 days into it and realized that something was happening to me that I don't think had happened in years, which is that I had completely misjudged how long a writing project was going to take. I mean, completely. I was right around deadline time, and um, and I was nowhere near done. In fact, it's that rare thing that I could measure exactly how close to done I was in single digit percentages, because as you will see, this is 100 days and there's a numbered list, and I was right around 23. So I was 23% done when I should have been near done. So I wrote to Tyler McBrien, the estimable managing editor of Lawfare, and said, this column is actually not coming on Wednesday. It's going to come on Thursday. And so it did, and I slaved all day yesterday finding one act of mendacity, menace, or just inanity for each of the first 100 days. And I want to tell you something, it was not hard. The hard part was not identifying one, it was identifying only one and figuring out how to bury, things that had happened the same day as something that was more important or more amusing, and therefore had to be the act for that day. And so I want to commend it to you. It will be triggering. Some of it will make you laugh because they are dumb and they do stupid things, and that can be funny. It is horrifying. And, but I actually want you to read it. It takes less than 100 days. That's the point. It is not really a picture, a film. It's more of an impressionistic painting because, it's going to undervalue certain aspects. For example, Doge gets underplayed in it because it announces so little of what it does. And these are formal things mostly. Also, people with names get executive orders, like every law firm gets its own executive order, but people who get arrested and deported don't. They don't have they're not treated as individuals in executive power, so they tend to get a little bit underestimated. But as an impressionistic, a kind of pointillistic painting of the first 100 days of the second Trump administration, I have to congratulate myself. It kind of kicks ass. And I think you should read it, or at least read part of it. because it will remind you that things suck. You're not just hyperventilating about nothing. It's a lot of shit going down, and it's every single day. That all said, I want to raise with you all an important bright side, which is that the tree in my neighbor's yard is now gone. There is no truck with a cherry picker and a guys with chainsaws. There's no wood chipper running the entire time I'm trying to run the show. The sun is shining. Notice that seamless transition from the monologue to the, um, uh, the regular introduction. The sun is shining. The birds are chirping. It's going to be a great freaking day. And I think the cactus has something to say about that.
Financing Dog TV, the marketing revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is an effing revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, of which there are many, is that sometimes I text Eve Gaumond in the morning cheerfully saying, "You should come on the show today." And she says something in response like, "Yes, I want to discuss this." And she sends me a link to a draft article that she's working on. Um, and and without so much as reading it in detail, because it was like 20 minutes before the show, I respond something like, "Excellent." And so we have an agenda item for the show. And another one of the revolutionary features is that um, I sometimes shoot a note to Minna Ålander and say, "Hey, are you coming on the show today?" And she responds, "Yes." And Holly Berkeley Fletcher responds, "Oh, then I'm coming on too, because I've never actually met Minna Ålander and I want to." And so we have a combination of an agenda and a kind of meetup situation going on the show. And that freaking never happens on Fox and Friends, where everything is always scripted and down to the legs of the female, have to be in a co-host, hosts have to be in.
You'll never see my legs on this
I
show,
mean, this is
ever.
one of
Actually,
the this is one of the differences between
Well,
Fox and
there,
Friends.
you get a
There
little.
we go. There's a leg shot of Holly. Note that I did not solicit that, nor did we train the camera to do it whether she wanted it or not. We are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have uh, an unusual potpourri of show. And Ev, why don't we start with your agenda item?
well, I didn't when I sent you the link, I didn't realize that we would be having a full house. So we don't have to spend much time on it. This was just like, well, okay, if we have to talk about something, let's talk about something. But yeah, the piece I sent you is a short blog post that I'm writing about, like, well, you know how I work with AI and like try to find either flaws in them or like potential uses that could be interesting. So after spending a lot of time flagging all the ways it could be dangerous and almost reckless for lawyers to use AI in their practice to speed up their work. I've been trying to find ways where it could be actually useful to use it, or like what can a good sort of uses of AI or large language models could be for lawyers or
Well, you
law
need to talk
students.
to mythical co-host Scott Shapiro about this.
Yeah, definitely. Is this software or like thing public?
Um, I don't know if it's public, but it does exist, and they are uh, selling it. They have clients and stuff. And I keep telling Scott he needs to come on and talk about it. And Scott keeps pointing out that not that 8 o'clock a.m. in the year of our Lord 2025 is the exact time of day he has his meetings with staff, which is why he never comes on Dog Shirt TV. But I think we may have to move the show one day to accommodate Scott so that he can come on and talk about this project.
That would be great. I'd be really interested. And so yeah, so the what did I try to do to like what are the good uses? I know that you can help it like it's actually interesting to like open up your mind and maybe like if you don't know like a disposition like which is the ruling that says da da da. If you're knowledgeable enough that to know that you'll have to check elsewhere, it can be useful. I've had friends who found like obscure case law from Japan that has been really helpful in there. Like
In their
it's
Japanese litigation.
no, in their American and Canadian litigation. So like it's fine. But I wanted to use it for like law students and maybe like training law students for justice readiness, like to it's like train law students to actively engage for the promotion of justice. And I found a bunch of examples of law students interacting with clients in law clinics. And like sometimes I took an example from a novel, which is like you have a haughty uh, law student who's super pedantic with a tenant who's about to get like ejected from her apartment, and he ends up leaving the office crying because he's been extremely pedantic and extremely unhelpful. And I wanted to see like if I submit this extract from a book to ChatGPT, could it provide me with some interesting answers? Um, and I've been really surprised with the results. Actually, like,
So
and it
break it down. What have you submitted and what has ChatGPT produced for you?
so I took an extract for not from a novel, so it's not a real case, but it's pretty realistic. So and I just copy pasted it into ChatGPT and asked like, "Oh hi, I'm a law student. I have trouble being empathetic with my
You
clients."
lied to ChatGPT, Ev?
I would never do that. You know me. No, I would never do that.
Well, you
It
told
was just a, like,
ChatGPT
no,
you're a
no, it
law
was a
student.
yeah, but it's not actually far from reality. And it was just like action role playing. We were playing,
Okay,
ChatGPT
okay.
and I,
As
we were
long
like,
as
it
it
was
was
like
action role
theater.
playing and not
Yeah, yeah.
lying to ChatGPT, because
No
I think
lies.
I think if we're taking seriously that these are AI super intelligences, we have to consider the ethics of lying to them.
Yeah, just like the ethics of kicking them, like lying is the same thing. And you wouldn't want, like, they're learning like children. You don't want them to learn to lie, like, by mimicking you. So no, I would never do that. I didn't.
Okay.
We were playing together. And so I said, yeah, I'm a law student. I have trouble being empathetic with my clients. Uh, Here, like a transcript of the conversations I had. Could you help me find ways? How could I improve? And so the extract, the conversation was like a poor woman, elderly old woman with like 10 cats. Some of them die in the apartments, like, and she's hoarding stuff because when she goes to like when she goes shopping and something is on sale, she buys tons of it. So like it's her apartment is like she could appear in an episode of like Hoarders, and her landlord is about to kick her out because neighbors have complained and like it could be dangerous for fires and stuff. And she comes to the clinic with like paperwork that says that she's about to be like kicked out. And the law student is like, "Oh, I really don't think you have much of a case. You should have been more like if you had a little good faith, you could have done something, but now it's too late." And she leaves and cries. And I sent the extract to ChatGPT, and what I got is not a legalist. Like it's not something that a law student, like a first year law student with a very uh, legalistic worldview could have come up with. It's certainly something that a good housing lawyers would have known, but the law students wouldn't. It's
Well, and
like just
also
a
most people don't have access to good housing lawyers for regular consultations. So that's actually if you're at the level of being
yeah.
able
Well,
to
it's not a
mimic real
sorry.
professionals, that's pretty
I
cool, actually.
Yeah,
yeah.
fine.
Well, it's
No, it's
not
not
a.
legal advice, actually. It is
Sorry.
a
The echo is coming from Minna's.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
fine.
sorry.
No, it's not
Minna, if
legal
you mute
advice, actually.
yourself,
It is
wait, the
a
echo the echo is coming from Minna's end. Minna, can you keep yourself muted when you're not speaking?
okay.
Hi. Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, I
Hi,
missed the moment when
how
I
are you
could
doing?
like click the echo cancellation, so
Okay.
sorry.
It's quite okay. We never cancel people for missing echo cancellation. Welcome, Minna. Ev, you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying it was not legal advice, which is I'm actually happy it wasn't a legal advice. It was actually like here's a or like an organization that help tenants clean up their apartments to comply with city regulation, and it's free, and you could like have refer them to. So it was already something interesting, and also like they took some of the sentences where it was particularly pedantic or like lacking empathy, and he said, well, you could have rephrased it like this, you could have said that, and it really was interesting and helpful. So that was the first thing that I tried, which kind of impressed me and could, I think, led to having good conversations with law students in legal clinics. Um, and I did another test with, this time I gone through the literature in legal clinics education, and I found an example of like a testimony of a clinical professor who had struggled and um, one of her regrets in her career, but not regrets, but something that she was like not especially proud of herself in that very moment. So she was advising a team of law students who were trying to help a woman get custody of her child after she lost it because she was like because of negligence. And the lady was called like early in the morning saying, I won't be able to show up in the to the appointment because um I've had a bad night. And she was known for drug abuse, alcohol abuse. So they sat together and they discussed, and at no point did they find any explanation that could like explain what a bad night is, except like, well, she relapsed. She drank and now she's hangover and she cannot come. So they kind of talk about it, and they really try to find other explanation, but it doesn't occur to them that anything else could have happened. So they decide to drove to the motel where she's staying after her bad night. She's penniless. She cannot take the cab back because she has the bad night. And so they drive that there with the intention of confronting her. And when they arrive there, they realize that there's like their expectations were biased and they were prejudiced. And the real thing that had happened was like, okay, she was working as a grocery cashier in the grocery store. Her father was supposed to come back to pick her up, but turns out his car broke down, so he couldn't. So she's outside the grocery store. She's trying to figure out what to do. She called a cab, but at the middle of like of the ride, the cab driver realizes that she doesn't have any money except like her physical paycheck, so she won't be able to pay.
So it
Um,
was perfectly pedestrian, non-relapse related bad night shit.
Exactly. He drops her by the side of the road. She walks back, and she's stuck in the motel. And I asked ChatGPT for potential explanation, and it actually like listed these kind of stuff, which I found interesting. Well, I had to like push it a little bit, like yeah, get funkier than that, get more creative. But at the end of the day, I got a list which was much closer to the actual situation. So this is the kind of uses of AI that I think we should be thinking about more, like really expanding our word, like our breaking up our prejudices and stuff like that, and really using it as a brainstorming tool.
Interesting, because one of the things that everybody says about ChatGPT or generative AI is that it reinforces prejudices and biases. And you're citing a use case here where it's breaking up human bias and creating more imaginative
Yeah,
space
so
for
that's
empathetic
what I am
explanations for
trying
things,
to
which is
do.
pretty interesting.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that's what I am
Wait,
trying to do
Minna,
these
you're
days.
echoing again.
So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do these days, and the piece is gonna be published probably next week, and then I'll be working on to like it's very short and not very
Can I just
well
like
explained,
mention
but I'll be
something?
working on
Because
that
like
in
that
the
just
near
brought
future.
something to mind, like what you
Super
were saying
cool.
about like bias in AI and
Minna,
stuff. The other day, I was trying to get ChatGPT to criticize me myself. I was trying to sort of like make it like like I was giving it like all kinds of very clear hints, like what have I been wrong about? I mean, I have a list of things that I have been wrong about. It failed to find any of those. It sort of like the criticism amounted just to that I have a bias to being like positive on NATO. And like I was like, come on, like there must be something else at this. And it was pretty funny. Like then me and a colleague, we just tested it. Like we sort of tried to like prompt it to criticize a number of colleagues, like some of whom have such profiles that and have had some like even sort of academic feuds going on where you would very easily find ways to criticize them, and it would just like not do it. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
so that
Super interesting.
so
Mm.
Oh, you
that
gotta
Super
do
interesting.
so
Ben. Do Ben.
I have a similar thing. So early in the history of ChatGPT, oh, and I just want to point out that Minna has shown up on the show with a Moomin Troll mug, which is, that brings me back to my childhood. I am a Finn family Moomin Troll
So you will find this in
fanatic
every
from
single
when I
Finnish
was a
household
small
and probably
child.
90% of Swedish
There you go.
households.
Um, Tove Jansson. Tove Jansson, great, great American. Um, all right. Yeah. So I want to tell you about my recent experience with ChatGPT, which is that a while back, unbeknownst to me, Catherine Pompilio, the producer extraordinaire of all of the makeup videos, asked ChatGPT for information about me, and ChatGPT informed her that I was a former member of Congress, and I forget what the other one was. There were wild hallucinations about me, which she found very amusing. So recently, she decided to check in and think. Oh, the other wild one was that she had displaced me as the editor in chief of Lawfare in some kind of a bloodless coup. And so recently, she decided to check whether these were still true. And not only did ChatGPT not think that I was a former member of Congress, it kind of scolded her for, spreading disinformation. And it said, no, I'd never been a member of Congress. I was the editor in chief of Lawfare. So then she asked whether she was the editor in chief of Lawfare. And it informed her, like, not to have delusions of grandeur. I was still the editor in chief of Lawfare, and you know, whatever, and that she was an associate editor, which is, grand enough. Um, but then Catherine did find an area in which ChatGPT was still, hallucinating, which is that she asked it about my career as a makeup influencer. and it denied that I had been making any makeup videos, and it instructed her rather archly that I was a legal commentator, and that I was the editor of Lawfare and was not. There were plenty of good makeup influencers that it could identify for her, but that I was not one of them. And so I want to say to ChatGPT, you've made progress about my career. But as with Minna,
So how this was
you're
explained to me,
not
because like
getting the
ChatGPT
full
had no
range
idea of my
of the
recent
activity.
sort of like lack of faith in NATO and like other very sort of Trump critical statements and articles and stuff. So it seems to have quite the sort of like delay in updating. So the information that it has is like from like at least a year ago or so. Like I forget now exactly like how long that delay is, but it's not up to date somehow. So that will explain. Like I don't remember exactly when you did the first Get Ready of Me with Me video, but like maybe it's just like lagging behind.
Yeah, it was after the Trump's election, but I like, and similarly, yeah, it was after the Trump's election, but I like, and similarly, the controversies around you though are not all within. I mean, you've been like the most hated woman in Germany for a long time, and
There's
so
one.
I think we cannot
Sorry.
explain all of this
Another
with
one.
reference to lag. So
There's one. Sorry. One other explanation. When you asked ChatGPT about you, did you say like I'm looking for criticism of me, or
So
like
I gave it
I'm
different
gonna
prompts. Like it
debate
was first
her
as
and I
like
want to find
generally
all
like
of
my
her
profile,
flaws
then
in
like what
her
has
like the
Minna Ålander been criticized for. Then I tried to like what has she been wrong about, and there the answer was pretty funny. It was sort of like she has not been conclusively proven wrong on anything, and I thought that was like a very diplomatic answer. And then like it would then we sort of like, and it also sort of like ChatGPT suggested to sort of like contrast my profile with some others like who pop up in similar like topical contexts or something, and then it would make sort of like a list of like who has which profile, how do they differ, and so on. And then it would get into this kind of like, okay, like this person focuses more on this, so their flaw is that they don't focus so much on that. But then that's obvious, like if you're an expert, you're not going to focus on the other things, you're going to focus on your expertise. So it was sort of lame. But actually on the Germany part, it was very hilarious. We also asked ChatGPT to write sort of like a letter from a frustrated like German like media consumer about me, and it was hilarious. It was like a fictive Günther Hermann from Saarland in Western Germany, and it was like that was so funny. So I have to give that to ChatGPT, that was pretty spot on.
all right. All right. What is on your mind this morning, Minna? Are you now that the first 100 days of the Trump administration are over? Are you relaxed? Are you inspired
So
by
I've been really
Canada's
following
voting
closely some
habits?
like
What are
interesting
your
news from
deep
Europe
thoughts this
recently,
morning?
which don't have to do necessarily with some like huge strategic level announcements, but this is part of my sort of ongoing friendly beef with a lot of American friends about like them being frustrated that in their opinion the EU or Europe is not doing enough, and that everybody's still completely delusional about Trump and so on. And they are sort of like often missing like all the details that are happening. So, for example, there was just like in a Swedish newspaper, there was a big article about how Swedish cloud providers are now all of a sudden getting a bunch of new Danish customers, and like how this like worries about like Trump potentially having the power to force US digital service providers to sort of like just shut it off for European companies, and like not only companies but also sort of like state actors and so on, like how that affects sort of like or how that has given a huge boost to the European strive for digital sovereignty, and how like European companies are now really like starting to produce are starting to develop alternatives. Plus, that those alternatives that are um, that exist already are getting like massive amounts of money thrown at them from investors, because everybody's now trying to find a way to at least back up their data in some European cloud and so on. In the Netherlands, the parliament urged a motion on to looking into so that the government should start looking into developing alternative European-based payment systems to MasterCard and like other big, also like credit card, like the payment terminals and so on, like everything in there. So I think that it's really fascinating to sort of follow all the like little things that are happening, but that may amount to actually a huge blow to US economy, because like especially these, so apart from like whatever the EU is gonna do about the tech giants, basically, where the EU has also announced that it's gonna start like preparing for some countermeasures against the big players, unless they start like complying with the rules more diligently. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on, because like from a European perspective, it's not only about sort of like this defense and security related sovereignty and the dependence on the US, but all the other dependencies as well. And I think that I'm not sure how like aware American businesses and like policymakers are of like what's going on and what that can mean in the longer run for the US economy. And yeah, I'm like symbolically, Tesla sales in Sweden just like crashed by 80% compared to April last year.
70% here.
Yeah, so
it's not that.
yeah, and
Well,
there's
but they
also
crashed by
no,
70%
and there
here,
was
so
and that's
it's
not just Sweden, it's like pretty
it's not
universal
that
trend in at least Northern
it's
Europe.
not
And
that
there
big a
was also a
difference.
poll where like 2 of 3 Swedes said that they are like actively boycotting US products, like not only Tesla but others too. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on.
Meanwhile, are surging.
Yeah, so
I'm joking. Volvo sales,
but I mean,
meanwhile, are
in a way, I'm
surging
sort of like,
here.
I'm just curious to
No,
see at what
I'm
point
joking. I just made that up.
all of this will start sort of like hampering Trump's ability to wreak havoc.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think it's, if you combine it with the analogous questions that operate at a domestic level, or at a what the Russians would call a near abroad level, right? Canadians just voted to put in a government, as for the first time in Canadian history, an election that turned entirely on the relationship with the United States. And the party that represented was at a low ebb of its popularity, um, won relatively decisively, purely on the basis of being the party that was best positioned to confront Donald Trump, right? And you have Ev, is you're shaking your head.
Well, I think you're totally right, but best position to confront Donald Trump and also being clearly different from him. Like, I think there was part of the vote that was also about like what kind of leader do we want uh,
Right.
for our policies, like our local policies too.
No, that's a fair corrective, but I do think there's 1,000 examples of that going on at the domestic level as well, including, you know, down to the level of individual judges thinking about individual cases, um, including a whole lot of Trump appointed judges. And so there's just a real sense that the world is adding friction and a huge part of that is individual businesses in Europe making individual decisions that will never be publicly explained as, a part of an anti-American thing. They will just be explained in, this was what was good for the business, this was the thing we decided to do, but it will be indelibly inscribed with that. So, Holly, what is on your mind this morning while we are doing I started it by saying a potpourri, but since Minna's joining from Sweden, let's say a smorgasbord of issues that people are thinking about.
Well, it's so nice to see Minna. And I heard her obviously on I usually, if I'm not on here, I always listen. So I don't,
Same,
actually didn't
same.
really know what you looked like. So you're very lovely, Minna. It's very good to see your face. Um, I won't, I won't go on about my Finnish boyfriend again. That's the only Finland connection that I have. And I'll leave that there. But so I've had a very busy week, a lot of protests this week. There were two yesterday. By the way, there was a one at the Supreme Court, Law Day. Did you know May Day and Law Day are the same day? So that created a protest, cluster. I won't use the F word for Jonathan Rauch's sake.
I was once the Law Day speaker at the National Security Agency.
Oh, well, that's very nice. I wonder if they're having Law Day at the National
I
Security
I kind of I don't
anymore.
know, yeah,
About it.
but I
Well,
know
I just,
yesterday came and went, and I did not give a Law Day speech at the National Security Agency
yeah.
this year.
Well, when at the agency, Constitution Day was a big day, as was Remember Your, and then they had our oath just wallpapered everywhere, and I wonder if it's still there. I don't know that they want people to remember their oaths anymore. I think they're actually wanting people to forget their oaths, but that's another matter. But I wanted to ask you actually about the protest. So it was billed as a vigil. I've been also going to these interfaith vigils of various kinds, mainly organized by liberal Christian groups, which I am a liberal Christian, I would say. So I went to one on Monday at the Supreme Court. Again, I'm on Capitol Hill so much these days. And it was organized by a well-known Black pastor, William Barber, and his group, as well as some other groups. And they had the Supreme Court set part of it was non-eventful. They had a permit, and everything was on the up and up. And Reverend Barber, and some others gave very moving speeches. There was a rabbi there. There was an imam there. That's usually how these things go. But then, and I then peeled off. But and it was specifically advocating against the budget and all of the cuts, as we were talking yesterday, to children and you know this basically the safety net, which of course is of concern to liberal Christian groups, not MAGA Christian groups. So they went into the Capitol after that to continue there, I guess, not really the vigil, but just to gather in the rotunda and pray. And they got arrested. And the Capitol Police, and I feel like it's, it's anyway. I wanted your opinion because according to the Capitol Police, you're not allowed to do any kind of demonstration or rally or anything like that in the rotunda. But the video that they posted was basically just a small group, like maybe 4 people gathered together near one edge of the rotunda and praying together, and they got arrested.
Yeah, so I would say if they are, that is a losing proposition for the Capitol Police. A small group of people praying, if they were to, if that were to be litigated, the Capitol Police would, or the government would lose that.
Really? Even though it's, I mean, I don't know. They could argue.
What were they doing, and how small was the group?
So I couldn't tell from the footage because I mean the group at the Supreme Court was sizable, but most people did not go in. So I couldn't really tell from the video. It looked to be just a small group of the pastors, like maybe 10 people total, but like, one person obviously praying at a time, and they weren't using obviously a loudspeaker or anything. It was
They were just standing there talking to each other.
I mean, they were praying, but yeah.
No, but praying is not speech that is distinguishable. If you tolerate a group of 10 talking to each other, I'm not sure how you could constitutionally say unless they're addressing God, in which case they can't do it here.
They were praying out loud, of course. That was the issue. So anyway, I wasn't sure like the legal lines because I could kind of see it every different ways. But then in some of the reporting, it made a lot of news in religion news sources. And one of the articles I read pointed out that a MAGA musician actually played in the rotunda, but Lauren Boebert had set it up. So I guess if a member of Congress set it up, but he was actually playing, and he's heinous. Like
Right. So
they had a whole MAGA thing in the rotunda.
Well, I think it matters what the precise rules are. Are the rules that if you're going to have a group above a certain size, the rules have to be neutral with respect to religion and speech and content. But if is it that you have to have a member of Congress notify the Capitol Police that you're doing it? Is it that but it matters exactly what the rules are. But the general rule, look, my guess is they'll no paper the case, and so you'll never. But if it were litigated, I can't imagine that this Supreme Court would uphold that.
I don't think they were actually charged. They were arrested and taken in. I don't know if they were actually
Then
charged.
if they were to sue, they
Yeah.
would. I think they would very likely win. But it depends exactly on what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured that. But anyway, but I think there's a larger point in that it was just kind of ironic on just a few days after, or even maybe the day of, the whole announcement of the anti-Christian bias task force,
Right. By which they don't mean anti-liberal Christians.
Yeah, and certainly not Black Christians. So, which Reverend Barber is a well-known Black pastor. So, and most of the attendees were also Black clergy. So anyway, it was just kind of ironic, and many people observed that if a group of sort of MAGA clergy had gathered in the rotunda and quietly,
Prayed. It would
prayed,
not.
or even not quietly prayed, that they wondered whether if those people would have been arrested by the Capitol. I'm kind of two minds, because I don't doubt, like, if it's up to Speaker Johnson, like, yes, arrest all the liberals and all the Black people in the Capitol Rotunda, all the supposed Christians. But I'm sympathetic to the Capitol Police, because I assume that they make these decisions.
Yeah, my guess is that there are very specific rules, and the Capitol Police are the only ones who really know them. But I don't know, and I don't want to assume, and I do assume a presumption of regularity with respect to the Capitol Police, because they've always dealt very reasonably with me and people I know. And so but could I, I'm not at all averse to the idea that they could have screwed up in this case. All right. I want to ask Minna a question about this European research, and then we are going to open up the smorgasbord to a freestyle of engagement. But before we do, Minna, what are you doing with this research that you're doing on these like little points of European uh, uh, I don't know what to call them, divergence, or are you collecting them for Northern flank notes for your new column, which you should talk about, or are you
Why not all of
gunning
those?
for an invitation on the
I
Lawfare
don't think that there's
podcast
any
to
reason
discuss
to
them?
limit oneself. No, I mean, basically, this is part of like my ongoing sort of like following what the impact is of like what the Trump impact is on Europe, because it immediately kicked off processes that are not necessarily so like high profile and not so visible, and for a good reason, because like it wouldn't be sort of like diplomatically smart for a lot of small European countries to like openly provoke Trump right now. So I understand the frustration of some American colleagues and friends who would like to see sort of like more sort of like open criticism and so on. But I think that more important than that, more important than what is being said is what is being done. And these are exactly these kind of like little puzzle pieces that will in total then sort of contribute to a big picture of where we really are at. And this is sort of like in terms of, because like I'm likely going to write something about like something maybe a little bit bigger report or study at some point this year on like future European security arrangements, and all of this is part of it. Sort of this is also very relevant, I think, to collect all these like data points in terms of what we can expect to be the future of the transatlantic partnership post-Trump. Because like right now, I feel like the mood in Europe is that everybody's trying to just like manage the damage and limit the damage that he can do. And that's like sort of explains this, at least like diplomatic and rhetoric, like laying low. But at the same time, people are also working on like figuring out how to reduce sort of vulnerabilities that are related to dependencies on the US. So all of this will be really relevant for like the post-Trump era, like unless he does manage to get a third term. I mean, we don't know how long the Trump era will be at this point, but anyway, so that's sort of like what I'm doing with this. There's so much going on right now in Europe, sort of like many different developments that can go interesting ways, and it does sort of like require a little bit of this detective work, that you keep tabs on many different developments so that you can then sort of like kind of like put it together into this big picture so that you see what's really happening, and that you don't get this feeling that nothing is happening and everybody's just like delusional. So yeah, I think this is also part of my ongoing sort of a battle with some American colleagues who think that it's not enough. Maybe it isn't. We will see. Like it's too early to tell. It has been only 100 days so far. Yeah, but then about my new column that you mentioned. So in addition to my own Substack, Northern Flank Notes, I have now started writing a weekly column, sort of like on European affairs, for Phillips O'Brien. His newsletter on Substack, which is quite big, and like he is following all the developments.
For those who don't know him, who is Philip?
He's a professor of strategic studies at the
And
University
for
of St.
those who
Andrews in
don't know
Scotland,
him, who is
and
Philip
he's
O'Brien?
following everything related to Russia's war in Ukraine very closely. And our idea was actually, to an extent, that because he tends to be much more pessimistic about everything than I am, and I sort of like want to, like, I have chosen not to get cynical yet. So we thought that will make an interesting sort of like contrast as well, and like bring a sort of broader perspective to also his readers. And it will probably include also us testing like a little bit similar like Doctor TV style live streams at some point, potentially also to sort of like sometimes discuss these matters sort of like more interactively. So I think that's going to be sort of interesting, because we don't always agree on like our assessments of what's going on. So I think that's going to be quite interesting to be contributing to his Substack as well. I hope that I will still find the time and like have enough topics to write about for my own as well. This is going to be quite the challenge, but yeah, that's
Writing is generative. The more you write, the more you write.
at some point you have to be careful that you don't accidentally just
Writing
like
is generative. The
self-plagiarize, I
more
have
you
to say,
write,
like
the more
especially if
you
it's always
write.
the same topics, but luckily there's so much going on.
He does that.
I I self-plagiarize
He does that.
constantly.
And
I I
don't
am pro
great
self-plagiarizing,
self. I don't even
and
like to use the word
I don't
plagiarize.
even call it self. I don't even like to use the word plagiarizing there. It is impossible to plagiarize from yourself.
Copy paste.
And in fact, the right word
Yeah.
for it is recycling. And like other recycling, it is a good thing. When you can reuse material, that is good. All right. You're echoing again. So, look, we have a lot of material on the table here. We have Ev finding compassionate uses for ChatGPT and having it teach empathy to lawyers. We have Minna finding the things that Europeans are doing, not saying, all over the continent. We have Canadian elections. And we have Holly going to daily demonstrations, and not quite
Not
daily.
daily, but
Well, but almost daily. And we have by the way, Holly's One Thing a Day project,
oh yes, thank you for joining,
which
Ben.
which
Although your life is like you don't even have to do anything extra.
well, but I try to.
I
But
know.
we should, so we've got a lot on the table, and here's what we're all going to do. We have 9 minutes left. We are all going to stop talking and sit very awkwardly until a member of the audience shows up to discuss one of these
Like a Quaker
subjects with
meeting.
us. Yeah, here it goes.
Quaker
Ready? And the longer it goes on, the more awkward it's going to be for you. So be the person. Uh, and by the way, let's not always see the same hands. So, John Hawkinson, um, as a this is a virtue point for John Hawkinson. You cannot come in within 3 minutes. So you gotta. Everybody else has to sit here awkwardly before John can save the day at 3 minutes. Ready? Go. And Linda has intervened to after approximately 1 full minute. Linda,
Hey.
welcome to the big time.
Hey, yeah. So I was just wondering about Minna's column. When you say column, is this going to be like a
It will be on
magazine or
Substack, but not on my
in a
own
local
Substack. So I will
Where
just
do we
send the
find this
link into
column?
the chat so you will be able to find it there.
Good, good. And then, of course, because there was a dog in the picture a few minutes ago there. Let's hear about this pup.
Well,
I think the group, most of the group knows Lilo, the 3-year-old rescue pup who is a Dachshund Yorkshire Terrier miniature pinscher Chihuahua, and who is very cute but very vicious, has tried to attack Ben, that is not a lie, on multiple occasions. He does not
but I
like.
don't mind. I think Lilo is fine. It's really you who has a problem with Lilo.
No, he's actually. I don't think he did this on purpose, but he actually drew blood on one visitor, and ripped his shirt. But I think what happened was, I don't think he meant to. The visitor was moving through the house in a way that was concerning to Lilo, and Lilo jumped and didn't gauge like the velocity of his movement and happened to catch the visitor. So I don't think it was intentional, but did draw a tiny little droplets of blood, and most importantly, ripped the visitor's shirt, which had to be replaced, and it was a J. Crew very nice shirt. So he's cost us a lot of money, but that was a chunk.
And just one last dog question, and then I'm going to leave. I'm dying to know, is it Kilo, Cleo, Kylo? How big is
It
that
is
dog? How much?
Cleo, and she is named for the muse of history. And but in my heart, her name is Hootie PC Small Group.
How much does she
And
weigh now? Is the question.
so she has doubled in weight, which is why she is no longer on my lap. She has become large, and is probably, she's 13 kilos at last weighing, up from 7 when she showed up. So she is, she's getting big.
Why
Oh,
are you measuring in
happy
in,
day.
in kilos?
I was just doing that for the benefit of Europeans present. I
Okay,
I
all right,
I code switch.
that's fine.
I just
I
wanted to
don't.
say to Linda that in my heart, Cleo's name is Wee Toad, although I am concerned that she may no longer be wee.
Oh, that's correct. Look, everybody has a different name for Cleo, which is why she responds to none of the names. But yeah, a lot of people do call her Wee Toad. Um, Hootie PC Small Group. Um,
Oh,
uh,
so
you
Ben, if
know,
she does not respond to these names, please give us a rendition of how it is when you take her to the dog park. And are you still yelling Hootie?
no, I do not. Yeah, I mean, when I take her to the dog park, actually, and I need to collect her, I send Misha after her, and he's very good at herding her. And so, it's just one of those things. She manages, she never goes far. So, because she actually likes people and likes being around us. Hello, Carol.
Hi, I was just seeing if I could make it work.
You made it work,
I'm stunned.
and it's great
The hair,
to
love
see your
that.
I'm a
face.
mess. It's
No,
morning
what
hair.
is the teal hair? Have you always had that?
The blue hair
Yeah.
for
What's more
several
of a
years now.
teal? Is
Yeah,
it? Yeah, I like it. I like it. It's a good strategy.
thank you. I had these great glasses too, but they broke, and so I'm stuck with, kind of ordinary ones. But
Well,
maybe next time. Anyway, can we have Ava come back?
Ava comes when her mother comes, and her mother is now back in Kiev, and will join us soon, I'm sure. And Ava tends to come back with Nastya, but that will happen, no doubt in the near future at the time of the next outrage in U.S. Ukrainian relations.
Ava doesn't have her own link to the show yet.
Ava
She should.
is
She
is
definitely should.
still working on the manual dexterity thing, although she's walking now, which is, a big step. Folks, we're going to leave it there. It is 8:59. I want to congratulate everybody who broke up the awkward silence. Notice that once one person did it, everyone did it. And that's the way it's going to work. I think we may institute the awkward silence as a regular part of the show and just see how short we can get it. Minna, Ev, Holly, thank you for today's smorgasbord of stuff, which fit together seamlessly like a glove, or not. Um, Folks, we're going to be back on Monday, and it's going to be incredible. I haven't looked at the schedule, so I don't know who the co-hosts are going to be. I got no idea who the guests are going to be, but I am excited about it for no particular reason, and so should you be. Cheers.